So equanimity. So when we start on the compassion wing, the goal of the wisdom wing, which is kind of the first and second scopes of the Lam Rim, or you call that the wisdom wing, the goal of that is renunciation. And when you've accomplished this, you're a pretty incredible person. You'd be really stable. You would have controlled your body and speech. You live in your vows. You don't harm others. You've controlled your mind. You really can focus. You're stable in your mind. You don't lose the plot. You're a pretty amazing person. In fact, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you've got renunciation when just the thought of another moment of attachment is so disgusting, it's like being in a septic tank. So that's pretty intense. That's renunciation. You'd be a marvelous, content, fulfilled person by now. But let's look at the compassion wing. The goal of the compassion wing, the first stages, is to cultivate bodhicitta, this outrageous attitude based on incredible love and compassion that only wants to help others. It's this kind of paradigm shift that occurs in the mind of a person who's actually accomplished bodhicitta, not just have a nice feeling for it. It's pretty profound, this bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is based on this unique characteristic of what the compassion of the bodhisattva path, which is the great compassion. And we'll go into that later. So, okay, if you look in the Lam Rim, you'll see these different packages of teachings that culminate in bodhicitta. So one of them is called the 6 causes and 1 effect, or the 7 point something. And then one of them is called exchanging self for others, which is a kind of more radical one and the favorite of all the great Tibetan practitioners, So the first step in all of these, there's a whole series of techniques. And in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, Pabongka Rinpoche mentions, he mixes these two together. So it comes to about 11 little techniques, 11 little meditations. I mean, people could spend years in retreat on these 11, which finally culminate in bodhicitta. But the first one, the ground floor, the first one, the beginning one, the basis, the foundation of the development of love and compassion and great compassion, and therefore bodhicitta, is called equanimity. So this word's used differently in the different levels of teachings. In the wisdom wing, as you develop more control over your body, speech, and mind, as you get renunciation and you become more fulfilled. Sometimes when we say renunciation, you just think you end up becoming miserable. No, the opposite. You become more joyful, more content, more fulfilled. So when you're like that, you have a certain kind of equanimity, which means within your mind, you have more stability. You're more equal. You're not up and down like a yo-yo, like we are when we have no control over our minds and no awareness of our minds. So this equanimity is that one. But here on the Mahayana path, the equanimity we're discussing is very specific. It's this heart, when you've got it, when you've accomplished it, this heartfelt recognition that friend, enemy, and stranger, and there's no fourth category of sentient beings on this planet, and we'll explain and you'll see, but that the heartfelt recognition that enemies, friends, and strangers are equal to each other from one point of view. This is equanimity. They're equal to each other from one point of view. They're equal in their wish to be happy, and they're equal in their wish not to suffer. So these are very profound concepts, because the wish that someone be happy, that for Buddhism is the definition of love. May you be happy. That's what love means. Love has got nothing to do with attachment. But right now we completely conflate these two, and we're going to discuss this. And then compassion, so then the recognition that every sentient being wants not to suffer, that's really crucial too, because that's the definition of compassion. May you not suffer. So love is may you be happy. When you see people happy, you're delighted they're happy. And compassion is may you not suffer. When you see people suffering, you have empathy and you experience their pain. That's love and compassion, and they are the essence of all the virtuous qualities. So, right now, why we need this equanimity is really logical, because right now, because Buddha's saying we are all capable of having love and compassion for every single sentient being. And that's huge, that's insane. Think of the world now. Think of the crazy politicians you think are horrible. Think of the maniacs. Think of the person who raped you. Think of your ugly father who hurt you. Think of your mean mother. Think of your auntie. Think of the people, whoever you think of who's really a suffering person and who harms people. You think, I'm supposed to love them? What does that mean even? It just seems too ridiculous to us to think that I should want horrible people to be happy. It just seems to contradict, common sense. So we have to understand the meaning of it. It sounds kind of lovely, but you've got to understand the logic of it. This is so important. So, if we're aiming to love and have compassion for every sentient being, then eventually have bodhicitta, which is this aspiration to never give up for countless lifetimes, working to help sentient beings, then we've got to kind of sort ourselves out at the very beginning. And this is the very first one, equanimity. So right now, what's the status? How do we feel right now? So basically, we've got friends, enemies, and strangers. So even as I'm talking, think in front of you right now, on to the left in front of you, your beloved. If we have any beloveds right now, a person you're in love with, or a person you adore, your little sister, your beautiful child, your grandma, someone you love, someone you really love. Okay? To the left in front of you, just visualize them as we talk. Then to the middle, in the middle, right in front of you, eyeball to eyeball, a person you can't stand. We might use the word enemy, but it's a very powerful little word, and it's just simply referring to a person we have aversion for. So aversion and attachment are the two fundamental neuroses that we swing between 1,000 times a day. I'm sure we talked last week. So aversion is a mild level of volatile anger, and then all the way down to internalized depression. They're all expressions of aversion. So attachment is basically, you see a person, you go, oh, that's lovely, and we go towards them. Aversion is, oh, no, that's ugly, and you go away from them. So they're very primordial, attachment and aversion. So now, the objects of our attachment are our beloveds. So they're the only person we have love for now. We have objects of attachment. What does that mean? That means people who look gorgeous to us, who do, but crucially, who do what my attachment wants. If you do everything I want, of course I'm going to love you. Because you satisfy my attachment. This sounds very cruel, but that's the definition right now here of what we mean by a friend. Of course, friends are also kind, and we do have there's virtue between us. But the defining characteristic is if you keep doing everything that my attachment wants, I'm prepared to call you a friend. You'll look gorgeous to me, I'll adore you, and I will happen to have love for you. They're the only ones we have love for, the objects of our attachment, our beloved baby, our divine boyfriend, whoever we adore right now. Of course, if we're living with some of these friends, we know we fight one day and hate them for a minute, but they're the friend, the objects of our attachment. Then you've got the objects of your aversion. Well, that's your ex-boyfriend. That's your mean boss. That's the person who's harmed you. That's the person you just don't like, that ugly old auntie, whatever. A person who annoys you, irritates you, upsets you. You don't have to say you're angry with them, but irritation, annoyed, upset, they're mild versions of anger. You don't want to be near the person. That's aversion. Well, that category of people, that's called enemies here for this meditation, for this discussion. Just think of it. The politicians you can't stand, the mean people, whatever you like, whatever you think, The third category is interesting. They're called strangers. And that's who? Well, honeys, people. That's 99.999% of the universe. And why? And how do we feel? So how do we feel about the friend? We love them because we have attachment for them. How do we feel about the enemies? We have aversion for them and we do not love them. We probably even have to struggle not to hate them. The third category, we couldn't care less. They could all drop dead. They don't even impact on our life. That's the meaning of a stranger. So these are the three root delusions. Buddha, when we talk in the wisdom wing, we do the analysis of the mind, especially in the middle scope in high school, when we really become our own therapists and we look deeply at the mind. This is when we learn about all the distinction between the neurotic states of mind and the virtuous states of mind. And Buddha is unique in making this distinction because he has found from his own amazing experience that we can get rid of all the rubbish. That's what we're trying to progress in, this job of ridding the mind of all the rubbish. This is what he's saying. He says it's not at the core of our being. This is what's incredible about Buddhist psychology. So, These three, so Buddha, he talks about like 84,000 distinct neurotic states of mind. Well, luckily, in that map of the mind, he narrows them all down to three. They all subsume in three: attachment, aversion, indifference. This is one way of presenting them. The three root delusions are actually ignorance, the root delusion. There's a hierarchical relationship. The root delusion, ignorance, the root neurotic state of mind that clings to the separate neurotic sense of a concrete me, which then gives rise to a huge attachment to get what that fantasy me wants, which then causes anger when it doesn't get what it wants. And this is what we are in samsara. These three, they're huge. And all the other delusions are rooted in these. So here, the three main delusions are presented in terms of the objects, in terms of sentient beings. So the objects of our attachment are called a friend. The object of our aversion is called an enemy. The object, in this case, an aspect of ignorance, is indifference. And that means people, why you adore your friend is because they do what your attachment wants. Why we hate the enemy or dislike the enemy, because they don't do what my attachment wants. And so the third one, this particular aspect of ignorance, is indifference, couldn't care less. Why? Because a stranger, by definition, is a person who neither harms me nor helps me. Therefore, I do not care. So if we think this way, then we should be embarrassed at how self-centered we are. But this is the universe, isn't it? Monkeys, dogs, ants all think this way. We all have friends, enemies, and strangers. And it's utterly the most natural thing in the universe. So, of course, we don't question it. But this is the Buddha's analysis of it. And it's profound. Well, it's unstable, Buddha says. It's ridiculous. It limits us as ordinary people. That's what samsara is. So we've got to try and cut across this. And if we're aiming to have love and compassion for everybody, whether they harm us or help us or do neither, we've got to have some logic for it. And that's what we accomplish in this equanimity. So in other words, what we're simply trying to do in this equanimity thinking, this analysis, is instead of using as the basis for having love and compassion that whether a person is nice to me or not. That's our basis right now. That's our logic right now. So look at you when you've got your beloveds. You know, if they're lovely people, and this is not horrible, it's just how we are. If they're nice people, your grandmother's kind and she loves you and she looks after you and she feeds you and she strokes you, of course you adore her. She makes you feel so happy, and that's wonderful. But we can't distinguish between the love we had for our grandmother and the attachment. Because if she's always loving to me, this feeds my attachment. So then it's easy to see her in a good light, and it's easy to want her to be happy. But look, when she starts getting a bit ugly and grumpy and old and mean and whacks you, forget about loving your grandma. It's really difficult, hard work, because she's no longer satisfying your attachment. If she starts hitting you with a stick. So, I mean, attachment drives everything. And it's very subtle, so we don't even notice it. We just think it's normal. So we've got to really, so then the Buddha's point here is very simple. We've got to get what we say. I'm thinking of these three people in front of us. We've got to get ourselves out of the equation. Try and see these three people, it's sort of like try to see them as having nothing to do with you. They're three separate people. And that, in other words, you've got to strip away this pretty picture, the ugly picture, and the boring picture, which your attachment and aversion and indifference literally paint. We create the way people look to us. We see everybody through these lenses of these three delusions. So it's very powerful. So we've got to use logic to break down ego's misconception. Because right now, I definitely want my grandmother to be happy. I want my beloved boyfriend to be happy. That's love, because they make me happy. But as Lama Zopa says, it's unstable. As we say, I don't know if it's in Russian, but in English we say it's got strings attached, you know. It's not stable. It's completely neurotic. It's I-based. It's completely self-based. I mean, it's embarrassing to hear this because it's so normal in the world, you know. So we've got to use some logic to break down these misconceptions. In other words, we've got to stop judging these three people. We've got to start labeling these three people in terms of whether or not they help me. It's got nothing to do with who they are in their bones, you know. So there's different logics we can use to do this. So let's think of one bit. One is very interesting. Think of yourself now and think of these three people And imagine you so think of yourself for the person, if you're looking at your friend now, think of you as the friend, yourself, you're the friend. And you can imagine, you see them looking at you with these loving eyes, and you know they see you as so gorgeous. They see you as lovely, they adore you, and they smile at you, and they think you're wonderful. That's because that person's got attachment for you. So they see you through the lenses of their attachment, so you appear delicious to them. Now, have the person now look at your enemy, the person who hates you, like your ex-boyfriend. Maybe you cheated on him, and he looks at you and he thinks you're a devil. He can't stand the sight of you. He thinks you're horrible. We know that. We can look at him the way he's looking at us with his dagged eyes, you know. So then he sees an enemy. He sees a mean, ugly person. We know this. Now look at the stranger. The stranger finds you so boring they can't even hardly look at you because you haven't touched their life. So they just see a boring, indifferent person. So here, my point here. You're one person. And whether a person looks at you and paints a picture of beauty, another person looks at you and paints a picture of ugly, and another person looks at you and paints a picture of boring, it's got nothing to do with who you are. So you know in yourself every second, whoever of those three is looking at you and labeling you, you only want to be happy every second. You only want to not suffer every second. This is fundamental. Whereas when we switch it over and you look at your friend, of course you want them to be happy. Why? Because they make you happy. But you look at your enemy and someone says, well, you know, Robina, that ex-boyfriend of yours, he also wants to be happy. He also doesn't want to suffer. And we go, excuse me, I don't care. Look what he did to me. I couldn't care if he wants to be happy. And then we think, what do you mean he wants to be happy? Then we think he doesn't deserve to be happy. So even the idea that a mean person wants to be happy is so weird to us. We think he doesn't deserve it. So we can't even go there. So we can't even get to the logic of it. Because we are completely painting the picture of that person with our anger. And we can't see the person past the picture we paint. Just like if you reverse it and see these three people. They're not seeing the same person at all. If they drew a picture of you, if they wrote a description of you, they're describing three separate people. One thinks you're gorgeous, one thinks you're horrible, and one thinks you're indifferent. So they can't even see you as you are. They can't see your heart and know that every second you want to be happy. Every second you don't want to suffer. I mean, this is scientific logic. But we've got to get past all these layers of our own projections to see it. And then in order to even begin, let's say with the enemy, in order to even think of your ex-boyfriend who's really, and he has hurt you, no argument, your boyfriend hurt you, he did cheat, no question. But to get past all that hurt, to get past the anger, to strip that out of the way and just see a person there who's got nothing to do with you, that's the best. That's really hard for this reason, because we've got all our projections. So when we can get past our own projections, we can just see a human being there and we'll realize, of course, he's exactly the same as my beloved. In their bones, they are equal. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. They're not equal in terms of kindness. No, they're not equal in terms of beauty. That's true. They're not. That's not the issue. So we've got to strip away all these lies that our attachment and aversion and ignorance paint on the world. That's what, in a sense, what we're trying to do to get equanimity. To get sort of almost like forget yourself. Get yourself out of the equation. Lose your memory. Stop painting all your pictures and just see these three people in themselves. These human beings. Yep, one's a maniac, one's a saint. That's not the discussion here. But what drives every being, Buddha says this, what fundamentally drives every ant, every dog, every psychosis, every psychotic, every maniac, every terrorist, every rapist, every saint, every being, what drives each one is the wish to be happy, the wish not to suffer. So this is a fundamental point we're trying to see. And it's not easy. And this is the first of the 11. This is the foundation upon which we will then realize what we're doing is changing our logic for why we want someone to be happy, from because they make me happy to because they want to be happy. That's the point we're trying to do. And it's intense. I mean, this is just the first one, but to the degree we can get it, we try. Are there any questions? I think it's good to have discussions about these things. So any questions, please? Just either written down. I mean, there were some questions last week we didn't answer. I know that relate now to this love and compassion, which is a good thing to discuss today. So any questions you've got, be ready and either write them down or say them and Diana can translate. but there were a couple in our list from last week that we didn't get to answer, from whichever day, I don't remember. And some of them were about compassion, you know. So one of the questions, I'll try and answer this, was somebody in Israel, actually, Riva. I don't know if she's still here, but it'll be relevant to people. What to do when you find out that people who you really help and support, knowing that they are in a difficult situation. Have you got the question there, Diana? No. Did Anastasia give it to you? Oh, what a drag. I don't know how to post it. I don't know how to show it to you. So let me just say it to you roughly.
Если можно эти вопросы куда-то запостить, чтобы я их не переводила сейчас, если они уже есть и так, ну, чтобы они были, то, по-моему, вот Настя пересылала Рабине. Но если нет, я буду переводить сейчас с листа.
Okay, basically, Reva's essential question is, you've been very kind to somebody, but they've misused you. This is a very common experience. When you feel you've given us support, you've given love, and then they've misused your kindness. That, I think, is a very common experience. So then, okay, this is the point now. This is the whole thing here about if you're on the wisdom wing still and you haven't done much work on your own mind and you're still full of attachment, and this attachment, more than anything, more than sex, more than drugs, more than rock and roll, more than eating, sleeping, going to the toilet, there's a particular attachment that's very primordial, and this is the attachment to be seen and loved by somebody, the attachment to be seen as a good girl. This is very primordial. So this is why we get misused by people, because we're blind. Because if I'm being kind to you and I'm all yearning and needy for your love and you are so grateful to me, and then because of my attachment is what makes me weak and it makes me have no wisdom, and I simply can't see that you're manipulating me. This is the commonest thing in countless relationships around the planet. And so the reason we get used by people and misused and harmed is because of our own attachment. This is so shocking. In English we have a saying, you get treated like a doormat. It's because of attachment that happens, and that's not the way we analyze it in modern psychology. I mean, maybe there is a bit. When you're all, there's a word in English, when you're very needy, emotionally needy, that's attachment to be loved by somebody. And when you've got attachment to be loved by somebody, attachment to be needed by somebody, attachment to be seen as a nice person, that blinds us, and that makes us foolish. It makes us weak, and then we can't see the person. We become blinded. So we don't realize that person's harming us, manipulating us, using us. The boyfriend's cheating on us. We thought they loved us because we can't see. So wisdom is the ability to simply have some common sense. Wisdom means common sense, I tell you. So if you've got not so much attachment to be loved and needed, you won't get abused by other people because you'll use your kindness in a wise way. And that's not easy to come by, you know. Another example of this, another way that our attachment makes a mess of our compassion, a different scenario would be to always use the example, let's say you have an alcoholic brother. And you do love your brother. You want your brother to be happy. You remember him since he's a child. You see his good qualities. You think this is a lovely human being. And now you see he's destroying himself. But this is the same problem where our compassion becomes a mess because it's polluted by our attachment. This is a very hard thing to see. We don't want to see this. But this attachment is so primordial. You see, attachment, this attachment I'm talking about, in general attachment in us, is this junkie that only wants the nice things. It can't stand things being unhappy. It doesn't like seeing people fighting. It doesn't want anything to be messy. It only wants everything to be lovely. So from that perspective, from the perspective of your attachment, your brother's alcoholism upsets you, makes you angry, makes you have aversion. It's really distressing to you. You see him upsetting mum and dad, and you get all kind of, attachment sticks its nose in, therefore. But at the same time, as that attachment, you do have compassion. Compassion is a virtue. Compassion sees his suffering. You have empathy for him. That is there, but your compassion is polluted and dragged down by your attachment, and we can't see that. So in other words, you don't suffer because you have compassion. You can't suffer because you've got a virtue. Virtues, and this is again unique to the Buddhist analysis of the mind, you can't possibly suffer because of love and compassion. Love and compassion are virtuous, valid, deep, profound states of mind that are rooted in a sense, and not a neurotic sense of self. Attachment and anger and neediness and anxiety and all of that, they are why we suffer. So the attachment to make everything lovely. So the attachment in you makes you stick your nose in your brother's business, bully him to go to AA or do something, and then talk about him behind his back and get all upset with him and get angry. That's because of your attachment. That's not because he's an alcoholic, and that's not because of your compassion. So if you had more wisdom, which means less attachment, you would recognize he's not interested in your advice. Yes, he's an alcoholic, and yes, he's suffering. But he's not ready for your advice. He's not asking you for advice. But we stick our nose in where it doesn't belong. That's because of attachment. So if you've got less attachment and you've got more wisdom, you realize he's suffering. Yes, he's suffering. But he's not asking for your advice. And if you shove it on him, he won't take it. So you mind your own business. And you don't talk about him all the time. That's what drags you down. So it's really quite powerful to distinguish between the neurotic states of mind and how they limit our wisdom, and they limit our compassion, they limit our love. That's why His Holiness says compassion is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. And it's exactly the same with the world. If you want to get out there and be political active and, demonstrate against all the bad politicians, you are being noble, definitely. But you don't realize that the reason you're suffering and the reason you get so upset is not because of your compassion, it's because of your attachment, because things are so distressing, and your anger because you can't stand seeing all the dramas. So attachment and anger are the troubles. They're the troublemakers, not compassion, not love. And this is unique to the Buddha, this utter distinction between the neurotic states of mind, the voices of ego, and the valid states of mind. This is the Buddha's view, and it takes us a while to really see this, I tell you. So are there any other questions? I can't see a thing. It's just blinded by the sun. Any other questions? I'll just have to rely on my ears.
I have the question.
Okay, Dinara.
Well, yes.
Good, Dinara. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe Diana, okay, go on. Diana can translate you. Go.
Я скажу по-русски. Получается, вот есть различие между привязанностью и любовью. Допустим, мы берем привязанность к нашей маме. То есть даже если наша мама может вести по отношению к нам себя не очень хорошо, там у нас могут быть какие-то конфликты, все равно же любовь остается. То есть я понимаю, что у мамы, допустим, плохое настроение, она мне что-то не то сказала. Или мы там поругались. Но любовь же все равно остается. То есть, получается, все-таки это любовь или привязанность? Любовь к родителям, например, к маме. То есть где вот это вот проходит граница?
Good, Janata. Thank you.
The question is that if my mother, acts in a way that it is not pleasant to me, so I kind of feel not love, yes,
exactly.
kind of aversion.
Exactly.
I understand that she loves me, but sometimes maybe she has like bad mood or something. So how can I in this particular situation with my mother differentiate attachment from love?
Dinara, this is thank you so much. Dinara, this is the exact point I'm talking about. And the very fact that you asked the question, which everybody recognizes, this is the story of everybody's life. Everybody has this experience. And this is why it's so hard. Because it sounds easy when we do the analysis. Oh, yes, one is attachment, one is love. The analysis, Dinara, is if we're trying to work on our own mind. So if you're not trying to work on your own mind, then the analysis is your mother's mean and you just got to put up with her. But if you're trying to work on your own mind, which is the wisdom wing, that means the logical reason why someone else's bad behavior, and it is bad behavior, your mother was angry, she is being mean, we understand this, and that's her problem. But the reason we get hurt by it is because of our attachment, Dinara, and it's not easy to play, it's not easy to work with it. We've all got the basic attachment we've got, Dinara. We've all got attachment. Attachment is this emotional hunger in us. We're born with it. The Buddha would say, from countless lifetimes of practice. Attachment is the main reason we suffer in daily life. Attachment is this sense of I'm never enough. Attachment is the feeling I haven't got enough. Attachment always wants some more cake, wants sound, nice music, wants happy feelings, wants pleasant situations. And the deepest attachment, for more than attachment for sex or drugs or rock and roll or food or sleep, the deepest attachment, what I was saying before, Dinara, and this is exactly what you're saying, is the expression of it, is we have this emotional hunger, this need to be people to be nice to us. Now, it seems so reasonable to expect that, doesn't it? But we can see this is why we all suffer. Because, you know, your mother is a typical person. She's got attachment too. And so when she gets angry, it's because she is feeling frustrated. She is feeling that she's not getting what she wants. So she lashes out at you because, you know, you always lash out at the person who's closest. So, yes, she is being mean and she is being angry. But the reason we suffer, Dinara, is because we have this attachment to be loved. And this is our practice, and it's not easy. In other words, put it like this. If we were all advanced practitioners and had really worked hard on our minds, on the wisdom wing, and we'd given up our attachment and given up anger, given up jealousy, then, you know, her harming us would not harm us. We would not be affected. So it shows us how much work we have to do. This is the logic. So that's what meaning. So then, especially because it's your mother, your practice, I mean, it's not easy. It's just not easy. To know the analysis first of why you suffer, because your attachment's not getting what it wants. Attachment's this junky inner Dinara that wants only the nice things every second. So as soon as your mother's mean, your attachment isn't getting what it wants. And that's why we get upset, and that's why we suffer. Easy words to say, but very hard to practice. So if it's your mum, you know, you have to, and this is where I don't know whether she lives with you. Does she just nod or say no? Does she live with you, or you see her only? Does she live with you or not? No or yes? No. Okay, so good. If she doesn't live with you, this is helpful, Dinara. At least if she doesn't live with you, you not have to put up with it every day. So this is where you've got to practice in your own mind before you see your mother. Maybe you know I've got to see her for 2 hours every day, or once a week, or whatever it is, or on the telephone. So you have to prepare yourself to know this is what she's like, and to not fall into the trap of getting like a little girl, like when you were a little girl, 5 years old, you know. You don't fall into the trap of being like a little girl. You try to remember she's your mum, she's old, she's cranky, and I have to learn to use this as my practice. So you try to stay equal while you're talking to her, and learn to do whatever she wants while you're with her. And even if it's 2 hours every day, you know that 2 hours is your mum's 2 hours, and I'm going to be there for her sake. And then you're going to just let her shout and let her be mean, and that's your practice, not to be hurt by it. And so it's not easy. It's very powerful practice, though. I mean, you understand, don't you? Makes sense or not? And every single person here, we all have the same experience. It's either our husband, our child, our grandmother, our sister. It's always close people. And this is where the dramas are. You know, this is where all the suffering is, with our close people. And it's the opportunity to do both wings. The wisdom wing is to work on your own attachment, your own anger, to meditate, to think about it, to talk to yourself, so you're ready for your mum. And then the compassion wing is what you're like when you're with her. You're there for her sake. Let her shout. And as we say in English, when you're really practicing properly, we say in English, then her angry words will be like water off a duck's back. It will not hurt you. But this is hard practice to do, honey. And everybody understands it. Are we communicating, Dinara? Yeah? Good. We all understand. All the same. It's not easy. What else? Questions? Any other questions written down? Andre, you said there's some more questions.
Да, у меня вопрос. Ян, мне вам по-русски, да, нужно сейчас сказать?
Who's talking? Where are you? I can't see. Who is it? Give the name. Who's talking?
Я вот руку подняла, у меня тут ладошки такие.
I can't see anybody. Can someone help me? Andre, can you please help me? You're the host. Who is talking? Andre, where are you?
Is talking. He has a raising hand.
I know, but I can't see it. I can't see anything. You have to tell me who it is. Give me a name so I can hear them. Just say the name to me, Andre.
Name is Olga.
Thank you.
Olga.
Good. Oh, good. Now, because I can't see anything. You can see me. Look, I can't see. Olga, talk to me. Happy to see you, darling.
Вы говорили как раз про голос привязанности, да, но наравне с голосом привязанности у нас всегда есть и голос любви, и голос сострадания. И, как сказала досточтимая Робина, чаще всего мы руководствуемся при помощи нашим близким, да, или при желании помочь нашим друзьям и близким голосом привязанности. А я бы хотела спросить, как же все-таки лучше чувствовать и слышать именно голос сострадания и любви, то есть распознавать их в момент, да, вот этих вот желаний помощи, и все-таки тренировать свой ум, настраиваться не на голос привязанности, да, и не
Try and keep your
культивировать.
question short, Olga. Short. Small question. Please translate. She's still not finished. Olga, darling. Andre, can you please translate?
So maybe I can translate then.
Come on then.
So in short, we, as you say, we most time listen to the attachment voice of attachment, and how we can really listen to voice of love and voice of compassion.
Okay, the essence of it, Olga, I hope he translated your words properly, darling. The essence of it, you know, it's like, this is a good analogy, Olga. Let's say you've got a big garden, but you do not know botany. You've never heard of botany. So you know, and your garden is full of weeds and flowers and vegetables and herbs. Now you know very well the weeds are what you do not want. So the weeds are the attachment, the anger, the jealousy, the depression, the anxiety, and they're very strong. The flowers and the herbs are love and compassion and kindness. Now, in our world, we know physically some kind of feeling if anger is there, and we know some kind of physical feeling if love is there, but it's too late. We have to learn to be much more precise in our recognition of all the different thoughts in our mind before they come feelings. So the analogy of botany is a good one. You could look at your mind every day. You could look at your garden every day. But if you don't know the words, if you've never learned botany, you can't judge what is a flower, what is a herb, and what is a weed. So if you don't, you've got to have concentration meditation, even the beginnings of it, a little bit, but you've got to learn the Buddhist understanding. It's like Buddha's botany. You've got to know what is love, what is attachment, what is anger, not just the feeling, but first the definition. And some are virtuous and positive and some are neurotic. So you have to first learn that a bit theoretically, and then you need the skill to be watching your mind like a hawk every second of the day. And as you get better and better at that, you will start to listen to all the conceptual stories, because attachment is I-based conceptual story. Anger is an I-based conceptual story. Love and compassion are not I-based, and they are virtuous and are related to others, but it's very hard to see them at a deeper level, and that's the level we have to see them at. Then we can begin to change them and develop our mind. Does that make sense, Olga? Does Olga hear me? Yes? It takes time, Olga. And it's not just vague. You can't just be vague about it. You've got to be precise. And that's a surprise to us when it comes to meditation and the mind. But it's because there are thousands of thoughts in there every second. We're having countless thoughts. The attachment and the love and the compassion are all mixed together. Like in your garden, the herbs and the flowers. You can't tell the difference. Who can tell the difference between a herb and a weed? If you have not learned botany, no matter how hard you look at it, you cannot see the difference. It's the same with our mind. All these thoughts are so subtle. So we really need to, this is what Lama Yeshe means by become our own therapist. And it takes time, you know. So all the neurotic ones, one good sign of what's going on in our mind is if we feel distressed. So you do not feel distress when it is love and compassion, but you do feel distress when it's attachment and anger. So if you're feeling distressed and tight, that's because it's delusions. But even then, if we understand, they're all so mixed together, so quick, it's not easy to discriminate between them. But that's what essentially Buddhist practice is as we progress on the path. That's the skill we learn better and better every day. That's the secret to success. Does that make sense, Olga? So slowly, slowly, honey. One step at a time. Did it answer your question? Did it? Good, darling. Good. And we have to be patient with ourselves, Olga. It's not going to happen overnight. We have to be patient with ourselves and learn every day from our experiences. Just like you would if you're being a gardener. You can't be the perfect gardener first day you've learned botany. You're going to pull out some weeds sometimes and you're going to pull out the flowers and leave the weeds. You make a mistake. It's a learning process. It's a really full-on job. This is really the essence of what Buddhist practice is every day. That's why we learn to meditate. That's why we learn to do purification practices, so that can help remove the weeds from the ground, so we can start to see our minds, Just have to persevere every day and learn from our experiences every day. It's not easy. What else, Andre? Any more questions?
I have a question from person named user.
Oh, okay, yes, sure.
Yes, and the question is what to do if you've been excluded and someone is trying to exclude you from Dharma groups, knowing that Dharma is exactly the thing that has saved my life.
Well, I hear the question, but it seems to me there must be some information behind that question, and this is not that easy to answer. It's not easy for me to answer unless I have more details, and we don't want to discuss too much details. It's because it's private. But it's not easy to, we've got to get the facts clear. We've got to get our facts clear. And often, and I don't know, you have to listen to what I'm saying and you tell me if, you're going to find out if what I'm saying to you is relevant or not. But sometimes, if we've got very strong, from our side, from our point of view, the mistake could be from our point of view. So let's look at the mistake from our point of view. It could be from the other point of view, it's true. But let's first look if there's something we can do from our point of view, from the wisdom wing. So the mistake could be from our point of view, that we've got very strong attachment to be approved of. We have got this like I was talking before, this very strong attachment to be seen and heard and approved of. So then we can start, if we don't get that, we can start to feel hurt and angry and paranoid. And then our mind can get very confused and start imagining things that aren't actually happening. That's one possibility, one aspect of it. But a second aspect of it is we could have some very heavy karma from a past life. And that's hard to shift. In other words, there's a kind of karma that's in our daily life, the karma where we experience things in relation to other people, our family or groups. And if, let's say, we've got some strong karma from a past life of being very negative or very abusive, or when this life, then you will be right. People will exclude us. That's what happens. People will reject us in relationships, we'll be thrown out from our job, the people at work won't like us, and that is a possibility. So it's either way, it's either our past karma from our own negative actions that we have caused it, or it's our present delusions and our neediness and our attachment and our own aversion. But it's not easy to live with. It's not easy. So what you're saying might be right. People might be rejecting you. They might be trying to push you away. It's absolutely true. It's a possibility. So all you can do is look at your mind. And all you can do is, if it's true, can accept the karma you created and try and change that karma. But that's very hard because we get hurt, we get upset, we think about it all the time, we get paranoid, we start having conspiracy theories, and we can go crazy. So it's not that easy how to deal with it. It's not that easy because we can't force other people to change. So, I don't know what your reality is, but I'm just giving different answers. And I don't know how much use any of my information is for you. But, if you can, as Buddha says, if you can change something, please change it. But if you can't, you're going to have to work on yourself. There's no choice. And maybe you leave the group. That's it. Maybe you leave. Because if you can live with it, if you can get your Dharma in this center and think that people don't like you, but you can still get your Dharma, then that's very courageous of you. You get what you need and you accept the suffering. If you can't live with it, if it's too painful, you need to leave. But to stay there and be miserable and paranoid and keep trying to get people to like you, you'll lose your mind. Am I communicating at all? Good. Just be brave, okay? Be brave and work on our own mind. If we can't change something, forget it. So, and it's not that easy. It's Anna, isn't it? Yes, darling, I see you now. I understand. But it's very common. It's a very common thing, Anna, to be rejected, to be harmed, to be hurt, to be blamed. Look at, from talking to me, Anna, hearing my teachings, all these experiences I have of people in prison totally innocent people on death row. I mean, can you imagine that nightmare? And then my friends who are really practicing, they have learned to completely accept this and learn to become marvelous human beings living in this nightmare. So if they can do it, and you've got the power to do it, Anna, you've got a good heart, you've got intelligence, and you're practicing. So learn to stop expecting people to like you. Learn to stop expecting people to approve of you. That's the pain, Anna. Let them be who they are. Don't have aversion for them, but stop wanting them to like you. When you like you, Anna, when you approve of you, it will not matter what people think. And I know you know this, but it's hard work, isn't it? Yes, we all understand. Who else? Good, darling. Who else? Any more questions?
Next question.
Yeah.
From Ekaterina Shirskaya. I'm working in sociology, and I frequently need to critically
work in what? Start again. Work in what? Andre, work in what?
In
sociology. Work. I understand. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Yes, and also in like social events, I also need to critically analyze.
Yes, that's right. You do.
Are there any criteria to analyze critically social events, and at the same time keep even how to say
even-minded.
Sorry. Yeah, even-minded to both sides. You know?
Yeah, so social events, I don't quite understand that. I was thinking about sociology dealing with human beings, but now I don't understand by social events. I'm a bit lost. I'm sorry, I don't quite get it. I don't know how to understand.
Maybe then I can open the mic.
Yeah, who was speaking that? Whose question is that?
Екатерина Щирская.
Здравствуйте.
So get it clear for me. Good. You say it to me in your own words. Come on now. And Diana can translate for me.
Я сейчас попробую.
Or Andre can translate. Go.
Говорите.
Иногда... Я могу, да, начать тогда?
Да, говорите.
Да. Иногда приходится в ходе социологического анализа прибегать к тем или иным оценочным суждениям. Но оценочные суждения, они все равно являются частью нашего номинального, только относительного понимания мира. И вот часто, если делать такие оценочные суждения, можно самому накапливать омрачение и тем самым накапливать негативную карму. Вот вопрос заключался в том, чтобы можно было оценивать какие-то политические и социальные явления, такие как капитализм, коммунизм, социализм и так далее, при этом стараясь не прибегать к какому-то... Должен быть какой-то критерий, чтобы это можно было критически осмыслить, но при этом не испортить себе карму.
What's he saying, Andre?
Yes. So he says that when you look at different events or different objects like socialism, capitalism.
Oh, you mean sort of viewpoints, political viewpoints, philosophical and political viewpoints of the world, right? Yes?
Yeah,
okay, good.
And how to actually evaluate them, analyze them without being critical and without
I see.
being,
now I understand. Okay, good. Listen, okay. It seems to me a good way to put it in ordinary words is there are facts and then there are fictions, and fictions are what are created by attachment, anger, and jealousy and all the other dramas. So the key way those states of mind function, according to the Buddhist analysis, is they exaggerate and distort. They don't see reality properly. But if we're seeing something with wisdom, with clarity, and if you take ethics as your basis, if we take ethics as our basis, and then you don't see it through the lens of attachment, you don't see it through the lens of anger, you don't see it through the lens of jealousy or resentment, then you'll be able to present the facts. So, as the Dalai Lama said, he thinks communist views are fantastic. if they're not distorted and not political and they're not kind of arrogant, but so you can see facts. You can look at a particular viewpoint and recognize if it's based in ethics, it'll be for the benefit of others. So whether you label it Christianity, whether you label it communism, if it's rooted in ethics, that's facts, and you can see it that way. But we put attachment on top of it, we put anger on top of it, and then you can't see it properly. Does that make sense to the man who asked the question? I mean, if you, for example, a politician. I remember the Dalai Lama said one time, I said, George Bush, one of the previous presidents, very conservative, and George Bush was a really good man, but I didn't like his politics. So that he was able to distinguish certain things that he did from the essence of the person. And I think that's how we should be with every individual human being. In other words, if I'm very attached to you, I want to see you as a perfect, handsome person, and I won't see all your faults. I'll be blind. But if I'm angry with you, I will only see your faults and I won't see your good qualities, because the delusions exaggerate. So the same with ideas, the same with the whole world. And that for Buddhism is what wisdom means. You see facts. You see the reality. And if we have less attachment and anger, and if you can help human beings more. If you've got children or even adults, you can see their mind more clearly. You can see their faults. You can see their good qualities, and you'll be wise because your mind is reasonable. That's the key to it. Does that make sense? Good. Okay. What else?
Next question from Alexandra.
Good.
Yes, and she's asking if we can't choose the parents. However, we can choose the partner, the boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah.
And if we feel the need to be loved, and this girlfriend or boyfriend could not give it anymore. What to do if it is better to work on your own mind, or just to leave it and go away?
I understand exactly. A perfect question. But before that, let me make a comment about what you said, that we don't choose our parents. Well, Buddhism says we do, which means we should practice the same with our parents, because due to past karma and a strong karmic relationship, a strong history with each other, our mind at the time of our death, the karma seeds ripen for us to go to our particular mother and our particular father. So we get the father and mother that we created, absolutely. So the bigger point here is whether it's your father or mother or whether it's your boyfriend, it's the same principle. So there's basically in any situation, and this is very brutal, but it's exactly your question, and it's a really perfect question, Alexandra. We have precisely two options in any situation, and sometimes you mightn't even have two options. And this is why my friends in prison are a perfect example. But let's say in ordinary life, let's say the boyfriend one, or even the boss. It's the same thing, your job or your relationship. So we have two choices. So we observe, there we have, I've got this, you're a normal person and you have attachment. And naturally, when we have attachment, we want to be loved. It's perfectly fine. And it's reasonable at an ordinary level to think if I'm going to live with a human being as my boyfriend, we should, have an agreement. We won't kick each other and rape each other and beat each other and cheat. We will have an agreement. We'll try and be nice to each other. That's reasonable. But the practice is because he's a regular guy and he's going to be upset one day and he's going to be self-centered one day, I'm going to get hurt because I'll take it personally. Well, that's my practice. That's my practice. So if we can, every day you've got to practice. Whatever you do, you've got to practice on your own attachment, your own fears. So then the other one is, if it gets too much, let's say he starts to abuse you. Let's say he beats you up every day. Let's say he keeps cheating on you. Now, if my attachment is so huge, I will sit there like an idiot and I will allow him to abuse me. That's what a victim means. That's why so many people on this planet suffer. And I'm not blaming victims, because victim mind is the mind of attachment and has no power, has no self-respect, and sits there like a little baby and gets abused. Now that's the tragedy, because it's because of attachment and fear. That's our problem. But the two choices are this. If you're trying to practice, you're checking this out and you're checking, okay, he's not behaving so well. He doesn't seem to be giving me as much love as I thought. He doesn't seem to be so interested anymore. You've got to have enough intelligence to realize maybe the relationship is over. If you've got attachment, you can't see that. Everybody else can see he doesn't love you anymore, but because of attachment, you can't see it. But if we can see that, then it is intelligent to say, okay, I'm out of here. Bye. But if we've got so much attachment, we can't see that. We're like stupid. So the two options are either you decide it's good practice for you, you decide I will stay, but that usually means there's something worthwhile in the relationship and he's prepared to work on it as well. But your main job is you've decided I'm going to stay, so I've decided this is my practice and I will work on my mind every day. I will try to give up attachment. I will try not to get angry. That's your practice. And if you can't do that, or if you think it's no longer worthwhile, you say goodbye, I am leaving. There are two options, but most of the time we're paralyzed. We might as well be in prison. We don't feel we have that choice. You know, like you're in a job where you hate the job, you hate the boss, and your friend says, well, you could leave. Oh no, I can't do that. I'll never get another job. Well, you could change your mind. Oh no, I can't do that. He's a horrible boss. So we do neither. We neither change our mind, nor do we leave. We just stay paralyzed, and that's a nightmare. So we've got to be brave. We've got to be brave to make one or the other choice. Now, my friends in prison don't have the luxury to leave. They only have one choice. Change their mind and put up with the shit, and some of them it's pretty intense. I don't know what Russian prisons are like, but American prisons are pretty bad, and the sentencing is terrible, and the many people who are innocent are in prison on death row, 20 years going crazy, but many people I know in prison are doing amazing jobs working on their mind, changing their mind. They don't have the luxury to change their situation, but we do. We're not in prison, and this is very powerful. It's very hard to make these choices, because we'd rather be victims. We'd rather say, I hate the boss, and also say, I can't change my job. So we stay in misery. This is like living in hell. This is what most people's lives are like, Hope that's helpful. So we've got to have some wisdom to make some decisions and have courage, okay? What else? Any more questions? Andre?
So, next question from Madina Nurmatova. Dear Robina, can you please give an advice how to deal with occasional laziness?
Oh, honey, laziness is our worst crime for everybody. There's 3 kinds of laziness. It's the worst crime. It's our worst crime. It's the reason we don't succeed at anything. And you know why? Because laziness is rooted in attachment, and the grossest attachment to our comfort zone. We don't like pushing. We don't like effort. So in the 6 perfections, the 4th of the 6 perfections of the bodhisattva is called enthusiasm or joyful effort. And it's the one that's most necessary. So think of ordinary life. To achieve anything, you have to make effort. And why? Analyze what effort is. So the very first kind of laziness is, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered. So you think, I've got to do my practice. Think of ordinary life. Forget practice. Forget Dharma. Just think of life. Think you've got to decide you've got to go to the gym to get fit. And you go to the gym on the first day, you get all excited. You go to the gym on the second day, and on the third day you go, oh no, can't be bothered. So you give yourself some logical reason. That's laziness, because we know, just the gym is a good example, you've got to push your body to go beyond its normal limits for the body to change. If you do your push-ups and then the moment it hurts you and you stop, your body will never change. So effort necessarily is what you have to make to achieve something, because achieving something means achieving something you haven't done before, and that means it takes effort. So everything takes effort. So here we're talking Dharma, of course, and so the inertia of attachment just to comfort is very powerful for us, and it's why we don't succeed at anything. Now the next kind of attachment is more tricky, and it's really a bit similar to the first one. You can't be bothered going to the gym, and then what you say is, oh, I'm too busy, I'll do it later. So we think that's a virtue, but that's lying to ourselves. That is completely lying to ourselves, because later will never come. And this is the reason most of us are so much suffering in our lives, because we put off doing the things we know we want to do. We put it off because we can't be bothered. This is laziness, and that's attachment to comfort. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. We don't like pushing. you know. So it's very powerful to have enthusiasm. The third one, which doesn't really sound like laziness, but it's our worst one. The third laziness is, oh, I can't achieve that. That's not possible. I can't do that. I'm not capable. This is the worst one of all. Because the logic is, as far as the Buddhist view is concerned, we are all capable. It's just a question of degree. You've got to do it at some point. You've got to grow one step at a time, gradually. Everything is possible. It is possible. It is possible to give up anger. It is possible to get concentration. It is possible to get bodhicitta. It is possible to realize emptiness. It is possible to get enlightened, but we have to go one step at a time. If you think that today I've got to realize emptiness, then that's not possible, right? But it's one step at a time. It's gradual. It's logic. It's cause and effect. So we have to, and the other thing is, all the lamas say, when you really know the benefits of something, you will make the effort. Now think of your own life. Think of the things we're attached to doing. Think of getting the food you want, or the cake you want, or the thing you want. We make incredible effort. We will never give up because we know the advantages. But when it comes to developing our mind, the inertia of this attachment and the old habits of putting things off and I will do it later are very, very deep. So we've got to be really on the alert to watch our tricky mind, you know, to watch ego. But don't, and then the other extreme is you push like a crazy person and then you make yourself mad. That's idiotic. So it's really understanding dependent arising. And these lovely sayings. In English we have a wonderful saying, you pave the way. Do you have that in Russian, Diana? You don't know it. Can you hear it, what I'm saying? Can you hear what I'm saying? You know, you have a pavement. It's beautiful. You make this pavement here. You don't, you know, what attachment's doing is always looking forward. Oh, where's the problem? Where's this? Where will I go? And you stumble over where you are now. But if you make this, you pave the way. You take, another saying is, you take one step at a time. It's very profound. So attachment is always rushing forward, not looking at reality now. But if you do today beautifully, if you live today beautifully and do some practice, then tomorrow your practice will be easier. But if you do no practice for 6 weeks and then try to start again, you'll be exhausted. So you do one step at a time. You pave the way. This is very humble and very logical. You don't have to make enormous effort and do 67 push-ups all at once. You do 1, then tomorrow you do 2, then tomorrow you do 3. It's gradual. And then you look back and you realize how much you've achieved and you'll have enthusiasm. This is fundamental. We will gain nothing if we can't do this. And we know, we admire people who have enthusiasm, you know. When we think of all the holy beings, we think of all the lamas and all these great practitioners, you know, it's unbelievable. It's very inspiring. But instead of thinking, oh, that's just Lama Zopa, he doesn't ever sleep, I could never do that. Well, I know I could not do that. But it doesn't mean I give up. It doesn't mean I don't think one day may I be like that. You use him as your inspiration. I want to become like that. Then you get inspired, you know. It's very powerful. I know Venerable Roger, Lama Zopa's attendant, one time he said that for Lama Zopa, sleep is a disgusting waste of time. So when I go to sleep at night, and I love my sleep, and I hit my pillow, I love my bed, and as I say to myself as I go to sleep, may I find sleep disgusting. So I program my mind, and then one day, maybe next life, I will find sleep disgusting. Are we communicating here? One step at a time. That's the secret to success. And enthusiasm comes. Then enthusiasm comes. Because you enjoy it. Joyful effort, as they say. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. It's a really good question. What else? More questions. Questions are the best. This time of discussion, I think questions are the best. It's very direct, you know. What else?
We kind of didn't have any
more. Okay.
Any question left?
Okay, good.
Question.
That's fine. No worries. So we've got a bit of time. I might have to finish earlier today if that's okay with everybody. Sorry. So okay. So then we've talked. So then the framework for today's discussion, and this is the essence of the entire path to enlightenment, I promise, is the 2 wings of the bird. Sounds easy to say it. So compassion is empathy with the suffering of others. But what's also fascinating now, let's look a bit deeper at this, because this is scary. At the moment, you see, Buddhism talks, okay, let's go back to the wisdom wing. To understand the compassion wing, we've got to go back to the wisdom wing. And in the wisdom wing, we learn about the 4 noble truths, okay? The 4 noble truths, Buddha's first teaching. after he got enlightened. He walked from Bodh Gaya to Varanasi. It took a few days, and he gave his very first teaching. So he presented his findings, right? And it was all framed in terms of suffering. So the first of these truths, they're not really, I don't think the truths are noble. It's really the 4 truths or the 4 facts for the noble ones. A noble one is a term used for a person who's realized these things, right? So the first one is very simple. There is suffering. The second is there are causes. The third is you can get rid of suffering and its causes, which is the whole point. And the fourth is how to do it. So it's a pretty practical presentation. It can be presented in quite, complex ways as well. But we'll keep it real simple, okay? So now, we know the word compassion means empathy with someone's suffering. So if we leap into the compassion wing without much wisdom wing, without understanding the 4 noble truths, the compassion we will have will be very limited. Because we know the only people we have compassion for on this planet are the victims, are the little dogs who get kicked, the children who get abused, the people who get raped and murdered, and the poor people who get stolen from the rich people. So we only have compassion for the victims, for innocent, and they've got to be innocent. Think about this. Now, Buddha's telling us on the compassion wing, sorry guys, every single sentient being wants to be happy. Every single sentient being wants to suffer, and every single sentient being deserves our compassion. And we go, hey, wait a minute. You mean those monster politicians, the rapists, the pedophiles? You mean I've got to have compassion for them? So where's the logic for this? And we've got to understand the logic, and that's where the 4 noble truths come in. Because Buddha's analysis of suffering, there are 2 extra levels of suffering. And second, the crucial thing that really helps us really understand what suffering is, and therefore, because everybody is suffering, and why we should have compassion for everybody, is because when we understand the 2 causes of suffering, and this is not the normal, the worldly analysis. So in terms of suffering, there are 3 levels, okay? The first one is called the suffering of suffering, and that's the one we understand. That's the little dog that gets kicked, the wife that gets beaten, the poor person that gets stolen from, the victim. That one we get. Or in our own lives, that's simply when the bad things happen. It's pretty straightforward. That we all understand. And that is the suffering we all don't want. That's the one that is absolutely clear for everybody. It's primordial. You don't need to be told that, it's not nice to be punched in the nose. You don't need to be told that it's pleasant to be loved. We all know that instinctively. And this is because anyway we have attachment and aversion. But this is the fundamental level of suffering. You look in your daily life. It's when the bad things happen. It's pretty straightforward. Now, okay, Buddha's got a bigger view here. And of course, if we've studied Buddha's teachings, we'll know it's covering the different realms of existence. But forget that one. Just keep this really simple in our daily life. Is when the bad things happen. And what that means, now if we go to the analysis of the second of these 4 noble truths, which is the causes of suffering, this is where it's quite shocking, but this is where it really grounds us in understanding Buddha's analysis of the world. And so the 2 main causes of my suffering are both inside me. This is shocking for us, because as far as I'm concerned, there's one cause of my suffering, and it's my lousy boyfriend. It's the person who stole from me. It's the horrible boss. It's the mean mother. Because why we think that? Because if we look at the first kind of suffering again, and we look at what we mean by suffering, which is when the bad things happen, the way to analyze that, no, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So let's look at what Buddha says are the 2 main causes of my suffering. The 2 main causes. So let's say, Andre is my boyfriend, and he is mean to me. Or my mother, like she said before, Dinara's mother is mean to you. That's cool. It's true. That's a fact. Externally, your mother's mean, Andre is mean. So the normal logic we have is, why are you suffering, Robina? Oh, Andre was mean to me. So nobody's going to argue with that. But from the Buddha's point of view, he gives a more subtle reason. He gives a more nuanced reason. He says, yes, Andre does play a role. He does. These people maybe who are rejecting somebody in a Dharma center, they do play a role in my suffering. They are rejecting me. These are facts. But this is due to karma, Buddha says. So there's 2 main reasons why I'm suffering. One is because I've harmed Andre in a past life. 22 lives ago. Those people at the Dharma Center, I've harmed them. I must have rejected them. I must have created the cause by doing something that causes them now to reject me. I must have done something in the past that causes Andre now to harm me. Now, let's look at happiness. It's the same logic. Let's say Andre's really kind to me every day. Let's say the people at the Dharma Center love me. Then I am also the main cause of that. That means I must have been virtuous in the past. I must have been always kind to Andre in the past. So if I'm smiling and you say, why are you happy, Robina? And I'll tell you the same reason for why I'm suffering, and I'll blame Andre. I'm happy because Andre's kind to me. Why are you suffering? I'm suffering because Andre's mean to me. This is how we think in the world. Now, what I'm getting at is, these are the voices of attachment and anger. That's the interpretation of attachment and anger. So when Andre's nice to me, because my attachment's getting what it wants, I think he's a lovely guy and he's the cause of my happiness, and I'll keep grasping at him to be nice to me. But if he's mean to me and my anger rises, how dare he do that to me, then I think he's the cause of my suffering. So anger and attachment inform every one of our experiences right now. So one cause of my suffering is my past action, karma. Karma, my past karma, my action, in this case negative, is the first cause of my suffering. But then the second cause of my suffering, and this is the main one, is the delusion in my mind that informed that action. So a negative action, by definition, a gross level, a negative action for the Buddha, is an action that harms another, that is driven by, motivated by a delusion. A virtuous action is an action that benefits another, that's motivated by a virtuous state of mind. And the action of virtue motivated by virtue is a cause of my present happiness, and the action that's negative, driven by a negative action, a negative state of mind, is the cause of my present suffering. Now, this is not easy to hear. I mean, we don't even posit a past life in our culture. To think that I'm the cause of my own happiness and the cause of my own suffering is quite shocking, and really takes time to think about. And when that becomes real for us, we will give up attachment and anger, I promise. When it's real, but it takes time for it to be real. So that's the logic. So now, if I look at, but now go back. So now, okay, so the delusions, the main ones are attachment and aversion. We run between these 1,000 times a day. So if I look at the first kind of suffering, the suffering of pain, the suffering of suffering, when the bad things happen, when Andre hurts me, another way of interpreting what that is when my attachment doesn't get what it wants. It sounds very cruel, but that's what it is. So if I get upset with Andre, it's because my attachment didn't get what it wanted. If I get upset by my mother, if I get upset by the people in the Dharma Center, if I get upset by the boss, it's because my attachment isn't getting what it wants. That's the Buddha's analysis of my suffering and its causes. So this is pretty intense. This is really powerful. This really needs much practice every day. First intellectually, theoretically, and then experientially. It's not easy to practice with this view, because we instinctively go to the view of blame and victim and punishment and reward. That's ego's view right now. That's why we have to hear Buddha's teachings. It's not, we can't just feel this naturally, you know. So that's just the first kind of suffering. Now, before we go even to the second and the third kind of suffering, more subtle, look at this first kind of suffering. Now that's the wisdom wing. You work on yourself. You recognize your own karma. And when you start to take responsibility with the view of karma, you do suffer less. You don't suffer so badly because you know why it's happening. When you really buy into karma, you know why the people in the Dharma Center are rejecting you. You stop feeling sorry for yourself. You know you're the cause of it. This is so powerful. So then, now my point is this. Let's now go to the compassion wing. Don't get to even subtle levels of suffering yet. Now let's go to the compassion wing. And now look around the world, people. Have you noticed lots of people get harmed? Have you noticed? Have you noticed people get raped, abused, stolen from, harmed, badmouthed, kicked, raped, you name it. Just like we are right now with our boyfriend or our mum, little mild versions of it. Everybody has this kind of suffering. Everybody gets harmed by others. This kind of karma is called experiences similar to the cause. It's how you're seen and treated by other people. And who caused it? We caused it. So when you know this for yourself, in the renunciation path, what that brings isn't guilt, but is incredible self-respect, incredible compassion for yourself, because you become accountable. It's sort of like you finally realize why you keep getting diabetes is because you've been eating sugar. So instead of blaming the sugar companies, you suddenly realize, I better be accountable here. I need to stop eating sugar. You grow up. You become accountable. You take responsibility. That's what karma implies. It's a very powerful philosophy, and it's got nothing to do with guilt. It's got to do with I'm in charge, I'm in control, and I can change it. So it's like compassion for yourself when you've got that. Now, I look at the world and I go, oh my God, all these poor people. Look at them being kicked and harmed and raped and murdered and stolen from. And the animals. And you realize that every single one of them is suffering because of their own past actions. So you don't go, oh, well, they deserve it. No, you have incredible compassion because out of ignorance, they don't realize they cause their own suffering. Now, how do you feel about the people who do the harm? That's where the real compassion kicks in. Because you know the present victim was the oppressor of the past life. And the oppressor now will be the victim of the future life. So we just keep changing roles, life after life after life after life. We've all been victims a million times, and we've all done the harm a million times. The person who's been raped was the rapist of the past. The rapist now will be the victim of the future. This is not a joke. This is the Buddhist analysis of the universe. And it's a completely different view. And when we understand it first for ourselves, we will then easily have compassion, not just for the victim, but even more for the oppressor, even more for the harmer, because the victim just finished their karma. But the person now, the other one that did the harm, is just beginning countless future lifetimes of incredible suffering. So it's a completely different view of why people do bad things, and therefore of the Buddha's answer, which is karma, and therefore a completely different analysis of compassion. So the bodhisattvas have unbelievable compassion for every single sentient being, all the rapists and murderers and terrorists and snakes and dogs and lions and whoever do harming. And the trouble is with us, though, when we say compassion, we're all sentimental about it. Oh, the poor thing can't help it, and pat him on the head. Rubbish. This compassion is powerful, and it's not sentimental. You'll know why that python wants to eat you for breakfast due to its negative karma. But just because you have compassion for the python doesn't mean you pat it on the head and think, poor little python. It'll eat you. So you are wise, you keep distant. So you keep distant from the rapist, you keep distant from the maniacs, you keep distant from the harmer people, but you have compassion for them because they're harming themselves by harming other people. This takes time, and this is the real compassion wing, but you cannot possibly have that until you understand your own suffering and take responsibility for your own suffering. And then you'll start to have compassion for yourself. Then you can have compassion for other people. And compassion is rooted in understanding the law of karma. This is huge for our culture, and it takes time to think about it. And this is what real wisdom brings, you know. Then you're like my Tibetan friends, like those young nuns I always quote. Years ago, when I was based in America, I'm in America, based in California, and I was working with the prison project, running the prison project in 2003. And Richard Gere, you know, he's a Buddhist, he invited the Dalai Lama to New York to give teachings, and he also invited a lot of ex-prisoners, 20 former prisoners, like a whole cross-section of Americans, you know, black, white, Puerto Rican, Mexican, male, female, and they all had talk about their suffering of being in prison. They'd all done some kind of meditation in prison. So he had this meeting with His Holiness. And it was a wonderful meeting, all these people, you know, learning, listening to the Dalai Lama and everything. They had a wonderful time. So Richard Gere also invited to give a talk to all the prisoners, 2 young Tibetan nuns who'd been, young women in Lhasa, being nuns. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't even kill ants, you know, but they imprisoned. And they were sexually abused and raped and tortured in prison, you know. So they were talking about their suffering. And it was very clear, it was very evident to all the Americans that these 2 young women weren't angry. So in our culture, We don't get that. We think anger is a healthy, good response to somebody doing something bad to you. And why do we think that? Because we have the view that I didn't ask to get born, my mother made me, I had no say in it, and look at all these mean people doing things to me unfairly because I don't deserve it. That's the view of ego. When you have the view of karma, you do not have this view of deserve or not deserve, of punishment and reward. It doesn't even arise in your mind. It's a completely different view. So these Tibetan nuns, they didn't have that view. They don't have anger. And analyze what anger is. Anger is, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve it. Now, if you have the view of karma, you don't have that thought. It doesn't exist in your mind. And as you know, these young Tibetan nuns, they don't have blame, they don't have guilt, but they don't have anger either, because they know why things are happening. For Buddhists in Tibet, it's been there like 1,1300 years. Karma, this is a 5,000-year-old philosophy, It's detailed. It's there in the texts. It's a view of the universe that's been around for several thousand years. The Tibetans, as a culture, have had this in their bones for 1,300 years. It's in the same way that materialism and neuroscience are natural to us. Karma is natural to them. It's completely integrated into their being. That's why they don't have much attachment and anger. Because attachment and anger are the voices of the innocent victim. I deserve good things. What do you mean you deserve? You've got to create the cause. I don't deserve bad things. Well, if you didn't create it, why are you having it? So they don't have that view. So these young women, talking about their suffering, very quiet, sad, one was in tears, but not angry. And then at the end, she said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers, because we know we must have harmed them in the past, and because they will suffer in the future for what they do. That's the view of karma. So when you've got the view of karma, it informs the entirety of your Buddhist practice. But it's a tough one, and often we skip over it, So there's some food for thought. And karma is not just some belief made up by the Buddha. It's literally is his view of the universe. He has seen it with his own mind. He didn't make it up. He doesn't own it. He hasn't got copyright on it. He didn't create it. It's reality that sentient beings create their own happiness and suffering. It's profound. His Holiness the Dalai Lama said karma's self-creation. I think it's a great idea. It's hard to practice it. I love the idea that I make myself. I love the idea that I'm the boss. It's wonderful. It's powerful accountability. And it cuts victim. It cuts fear. It cuts anger. It cuts attachment when we really practice it, which does take time. And it's fundamental in the whole Buddhist worldview, I don't know what the question was, but there's the answer. I think I have to finish soon. I'm sorry. My voice is just about gone. I'm so sorry. But I do talk fast, so maybe there's the advantage. Maybe more like, maybe we've been together for 3 hours. Diana's so kind. I can't believe it. You keep up with me, Diana? So amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andre. I'm going to leave early now. Just do a 3-minute meditation, okay? Just be completely natural. Don't prepare. Just close your eyes, and for 3 quality minutes, we're going to watch our mind. Just doesn't matter what comes up, doesn't matter what thoughts are there, don't label them, don't have a discussion with them, don't wish they'd go away, just watch your thoughts. Let them come and let them go. 3 quality minutes, okay? Just pay attention to your thoughts. Keep your mind sharp and clear, very spacious. So now I'm just going to sing the mantra. Can you turn my voice on for people, Diana? I want to sing a mantra so they can hear me. Can we do that? Have we done it? They can hear me now? Is the host now? Can we make my voice heard? I want to sing a mantra for people, just to listen. Can we do that? Have we done it? Can you people hear my voice? Nod or say no or yes. I can't see. You can hear my voice. You can all hear my voice. Yes? Can someone assure me that people can hear my voice? Dinara or Diana, can you tell me if they can hear my voice? Okay, I'm going to sing a mantra now. Compassion mantra. So imagine just as I say the mantra, the sound goes out and you imagine it blesses, light goes out and blesses all of us, fills us with light, fills us with love and compassion and every single sentient being. And you can sing with me if you like. Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Okay. Goodbye. See you next week. Thank you, everybody. Much love. Okay. And persevere and never give up. That's the key. Fall down, you pick yourself up again. Just keep moving. Never give up. Everybody has potential. Never not believe that. Okay. Much love. Thank you, Diana, so much.